Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. As we have just seen in this video, the Shia victimizing himself as always, which he watches Sunnis break their fast when the sun disk has disappeared, which is what the Prophets and the Imams ﷺ have commanded, while he contradicts what the Prophets and the Imams have commanded by waiting until the eastern redness has disappeared from the horizon. We read in Kitab al-Kafi by Kulaini, volume 6, in which he says, Zurara has narrated from Imam al-Baqir, where he says, the time of Maghrib is when the sun disk has disappeared, and the authentic narration of Yazid bin Khalifa from Ja'far al-Sadiq, where he says, Umar ibn Hanzala was truthful in what he said. Umar ibn Hanzala said that the time for Maghrib is when the sun disk has disappeared, and Ja'far al-Sadiq said that he is truthful. As well as the authentic narration of Abdullah bin Sinan from Ja'far al-Sadiq, where he says, the time for Maghrib is when the sun has set, and this is when the sun disk has disappeared. These narrations are authentic, as Sayyid Muhsin al-Tattabai al-Hakim has said in Mustamsik al-Urwat al-Wuthqa, where he says, the authentic narration of Abdullah bin Sinan from Ja'far al-Sadiq, where he says the time for Maghrib is when the sun has set and the sun disk has disappeared. And the authentic narration of Zurara from al-Baqir, where he says the time for Maghrib is when the sun disk has disappeared. And the authentic narration of Dawood bin Farqad from Ja'far al-Sadiq, where he says the time for Maghrib is when the sun disk has disappeared. And the authentic narration of Ali ibn al-Hakam from either al-Baqir or al-Sadiq. Now, a Shia might come and say, we also have narrations that supports our view, that say we should break the fast when the eastern redness has disappeared. Now, we respond to this by saying that these narrations are weak. According to Al-Wahid al-Bahbahani, he says in his book Masabih al-Dhalam, when mentioning the time of Maghrib and when we should break our fast, he takes the opinion that it is when the sun disk has disappeared, and mentions the scholars who say this, and says that these narrations are massively transmitted, which do support the view of Ahl Sunnah, such as the authentic narration as we mentioned from Kitab al-Kafi. And it is said that it is when the redness has disappeared, and this is the view of the Shias today, وَعَلَيْهِ الْأَكْثَرُ, and this is the view of the majority of the Shias, due to weak narrations that contradict the reliable ones that are up for interpretation. So these narrations that tell the Shia to break their fast when the eastern redness has disappeared are weak, and therefore they're only left with the option of only taking the view of the Sunnis, and that is to break the fast when the sun disk has disappeared. And in this, they follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, as well as the Sunnah of their Imams. Now to add on to this, whose Sunnah do the Shia follow in breaking the fast when the redness has disappeared? Is this the Sunnah of the Prophets and the Imams, or is this the Sunnah of the innovators? Al-Fayd al-Kashani, in his book Mu'tasam al-Shia fi Ahkam al-Sharia, he mentions the time for Maghrib and responds to anyone who says that it is when the eastern redness disappears. And he says that this is the view of the early scholars such as Ibn Junayd and As-Saduq and Al-Murtala and Al-Tusi and other than them, and that this view is supported by massively transmitted narrations such as the authentic narration of Zayd and Zurara and Al-Fudayl and others such as the authentic narration of Abdullah bin Sinan, which we mentioned. Then he says, and the reliable narration of Zayd al-Shaham from Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says that a man came to him and he said that I delay the time for Maghrib until I see the stars. The Imam then said, Khattabiyya. Verily, Jibreel alayhi salam revealed it to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, meaning Maghrib, when the sun disk has disappeared. Al-Fayd al-Kashani comments and he says, Khattabiyya, meaning this is an innovation of the Khattabiyya, in reference to Abu AlKhattab, who is Muhammad ibn Maqlas, who is an extremist, who is a person who claimed prophethood, who was cursed upon the tongue of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And he was during his time, and he was a person of innovations and a person of desire. And from his innovations was that he used to delay Maghrib until they used to see the stars. And he used to have companions who followed him in this. Now it sounds like the Shias are like the companions of Abu AlKhattab, because they follow him in delaying Maghrib until the eastern redness has disappeared and until the stars have appeared in the skies. Now, what does the Mahdi of the Shia say about the companions of Abu AlKhattab? Shaykh al-Tusi mentions in his book Kitab al-Ghaiba, with an authentic chain, that the Mahdi said in his Tawqiyah. He says, as for Abu AlKhattab, he is cursed, and his companions are cursed, so do not sit with them, and I am free from them, and so are my forefathers, meaning the Imams before the Mahdi. Now a common argument which the Shias bring forward when we confront them about why they break their fast at this time, they say that the Quran commands us to complete the fast until the night. However, the Shias, being enemies of the Arabic language, do not know what Layl means. Ibn Mandur in Lisan al-Arab says that Layl is from the sunset, as well as Al-Fayruz Abadi in his book Al-Qamus al-Muhit says that Layl is from the sunset until the sunrise, meaning Fajr. Also, the Shia scholar Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man al-Maghribi says in the Da'im al-Islam, after quoting the ayah, says, and we have narrated from the Ahlul Bayt by consensus in what we have narrated from them, that the time of Layl is when it is lawful for the one who is fasting to break his fast, and this is when the sun has set. And he says, when the sun disk has disappeared, then it is time for Maghrib, and it is time for the person who is fasting to break his fast. So now we can conclude that the time to break the fast is when the sun disk has disappeared, which is what us Muslims Ahlul Sunnah do. And this is what the Prophets and the Imams have commanded their Shia of doing. And the narrations that say to break the fast when the eastern redness has disappeared are weak narrations that contradict the reliable ones and are eligible for different interpretations. We have also presented that breaking the fast when the eastern redness has disappeared is from the innovations of Abu AlKhattab, who is an extremist, who was a person who claimed prophethood, and was a person who was cursed by Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. And we showed that ones who follow his bid'ah are from his companions, and that Imam al-Mahdi in the Shia books has cursed Abu AlKhattab and his companions, and said that he is free from them, and so are his forefathers. So ya Shia, stop following the innovation of Abu AlKhattab, and break your fast when the sun disk disappears, just as the Muslims and the Prophets and the Imams have done. So may Allah guide the Shias to the guidance of the Prophets and the Imams. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.